Hey, Boss Fam. Welcome to episode 98. I'm Jenny, and I help squirrel brained entrepreneurs thrive in a world of shiny objects. If your to do list is overwhelming or your I help statement is all over the place and it gets in the way of you doing the thing, then I am so happy you found your way to this podcast. I have a question for you. Say we're at a cocktail party and a stranger approaches us. And instead of the usual opening lines, they say, "So, what would you say are your top core values?" Would you A, be able to immediately fire off the five principles that matter most to you in your life? I mean, they are your values after all. So they're in us. We ought to be embodying them. So we should know what they are if they're at the core of what makes us who we are as individuals, right? Maybe you'd go with option B because you've been in the online business space for a while and you've done this exercise with coaches before. So you're scrolling through your mental Rolodex about how many times you've done this exercise and how many different core values you ended up with in each one and how you never really whittled the list down and what do you really stand for anyway? Or maybe you would stand there with a blank expression on your face and say, I don't actually know how to define a core value. Like I have a general premise of what that means. Is nice a core value? I offer you these three scenarios because at different stages in my life, that has been exactly how I have responded to this question. Also, I work with multi-passionates, and when we sit down to talk about branding, they always have a list of 45 core values. And I understand, I know you love everything. I do too, but that's not how this works. This isn't the most efficient way to go about this. Your core values list isn't meant to be every single thing that you think is important in your life. It is the top three, maybe five, no more than 10. I'm serious. Most important. 10 is actually too many. And I'll tell you why. If you are trying to create a coherent, cohesive brand message, combining 10 core values into that message is going to get a little bit watered down. Like, who are you actually talking to at that point? What are their values? Because when you have a really big values list and your ideal client has some combination of those values, now your ideal client is everyone. And when you're for everyone, you're for no one. So that's why this is so important. And it's not enough to be like, sure, I did the assignment with 55% effort and there's 27 values on the list and it's fine. Let's go to the next step. No, this episode is going to help you nail the answer to this question. If someone were to ask you this at a cocktail party, you are going to fire off those bullet points like a professional. No matter how many iterations your multi-passionate brand undergoes, as you hone closer in on who it is you want to help, or as you layer on new passions, no matter what ebbs and flows are naturally going to occur because you're multi-passionate, your business core values will remain the same throughout all of it. And I don't know about you, but because things are always changing in my multi-passionate life, knowing that something is going to be a consistent through line makes me feel safe. There's something really comforting about that. There's like one grounding line, basically. So I'm getting ahead of myself. For those of you who would be standing there like a deer in headlights at the question, let me define core value really quick for you. A value is obviously something of relative worth or importance. Core values then are principles or qualities that we deem desirable in other humans, in ourselves, in our romantic and business partners, and in the communities in which we live. So core values are the beginning, the genesis of all of your actions. In other words, not knowing what your core values are is like setting off on a cross-country road trip without a map or a compass or any navigational equipment whatsoever. Every time you need to make a navigational decision, you might as well flip a coin and hope for the best. That is what it's like to live without knowing these for yourself. So if you picture the life that you want as a product coming off of an assembly line, core values are the raw ingredient that you insert at the beginning of the assembly line. Your core values determine your beliefs, which govern your decisions, which generate your actions, and your actions create your behaviors, which become your habits that in turn produce your lifestyle. I know that was a lot of words. The point is, at the end of that list is lifestyle. So to create the lifestyle you want, which is what this entire podcast is about, getting clear on your values is step one. I should have made this episode a long time ago. So if we don't know and live by our values, we can't make decisions based on them, clearly. And when we make decisions that aren't based on our values, we intuitively feel off. We question those decisions and our subsequent actions, or we question whether the end result of the experience at hand is as good as it gets. So we're just kind of questioning everything, which makes us lose confidence in our ability to choose correctly. And then we have a hard time trusting ourselves. So that's just being out of alignment in general. And what that looks like is having unsatisfying relationships or debt or being passive aggressive or feeling guilty or spending time with people who drain us or eating unhealthily or succumbing to all kinds of addictions. Without a strong set of values, think of it like this: all of the temptations that separate you from your very best self will be more powerful than your own will. But if you do the exercises I'm going to share with you in this episode, you're going to get all of these positive results. And here's what those positive results will be. You will have more measured reactions. In other words, you will be less of an asshole. I am not saying you're an asshole, but if you ever are and you feel bad about it afterwards, core values can guide your behavior and ensure that you act in a way that matches who you want to be. So if you're not clear on the values that govern your interactions with other people, your ego is in charge by default. And as we all know, the ego is a 2-year-old. Pythagoras said, "No man is free who cannot control himself." I happen to agree with this. So if freedom is a core value for you, and it might be because you're in my audience, and it definitely is for me, if freedom is a core value, you probably won't lose your temper with your partner. If conducting yourself with grace is important to you, then you won't snap at your employees. So when you have those values in the forefront of your mind, you are more intentional when you react. Instead, you respond, right? That's what respond, don't react. Yes. So you will also learn to trust yourself. I touched on this a little bit earlier. Core values let you develop really strong opinions about all kinds of important subjects, kind of regardless of what your parents or other authority figures in your life believed, because so much of what we believe kind of unconsciously comes from the programming that we got when we were younger. And core values allow you to make your own path. And when you make your own path, this has the benefit of boosting your confidence, because when you know what you want and think is important, it doesn't matter as much what other people want or think is important. You're just less affected by the validation of other people. And when you respect yourself and consistently allow your values to guide your choices, you realize you're not going to let yourself down. I want to be this kind of person, so I'm going to choose accordingly. And now, you can trust yourself to do what's best in your own best interests. Also, strong values help you define your boundaries. We talk about boundaries a lot, like just in the online space in general. And they're hard for people, right? They're still hard for me. I am absolutely a work in progress, but knowing that you can trust yourself not to compromise on your boundaries, in my opinion, is the difference between being proud of who you are and being at war with yourself, like having cognitive dissonance. And I am living proof that that is no way to live. Don't do it to yourself. You're also going to be more decisive when you're walking the value talk, for sure. Sometimes emotions make it hard to choose a path. But if you ask yourself, what would someone who values X do in this situation? Then you will always be guided to an outcome that makes sense. It's like you can literally be on autopilot at this point. So, for example, a trustworthy person would do X, and because trustworthiness is super duper important to me, X is what I'm going to do. Like, you don't even have to choose. The decision is already made based on your core value. So this works really well in times of stress or temptation when willpower is at a minimum. So someone who's had a really rough day might be like, oh, I'm getting the death by chocolate for dessert. But if you truly prioritize health and vitality, you're going to be like, I'll pass, or my wine is dessert, right? So does that make sense? You will also get clarity. And I definitely talk about clarity a lot on this show because I don't think that multi-passionates suffer from a lack of focus. I think they suffer from a lack of clarity. So I love to quote Alice in Wonderland. Cheshire Cat famously said, if you don't know where you're going, any road will get you there. So stated another way, you can't obtain a satisfying career if you haven't defined satisfaction for yourself. So let me do the honors. Satisfaction would be living your ideal lifestyle, right? And as we learned above, creating the lifestyle that you want begins with identifying your core values. So your values directly impact your sense of fulfillment. Also, the flip side of this is that you can't have fulfillment if you don't know what you're willing to sacrifice for it. So that's all the values that don't make the cut. So consider, like, wealth might be important to you, but if integrity is more important to you and your six-figure job involves doing work that you don't stand behind morally or ethically, then something's got to give, that you're living out of alignment with the more important value. So when you're clear on what you want, you obviously also get clear on what you don't want. And that's totally helpful, right? It helps you eliminate baggage that you might be carrying. So lackluster relationships, a dead-end job, tasks that you hate, but have just, like, for whatever reason fallen on you and now they're expected of you. You get clear on those and you can eliminate that for yourself. You will also be more focused, right? Once you're clear, you're going to be more focused by default, and you will stay more motivated. So we now know that core values serve as our North Star. So let's say we want a life that's full of curiosity and adventure, and we consciously live those values. Then that means the actions that we take every single day will serve that end. So these values will create our why, which is the reason we're compelled to do a thing in business, why we're compelled to do that business. And our why makes us feel a palpable emotional reaction, even when we only imagine the outcome. The why is like what gets us out of bed in the morning. And it's what helps us continue to show up, even when we'd rather spend the day laying in bed watching Netflix. So focus is a dying art, as you know, and you're really destined to fail if you don't have a strong why for doing something, because every ping and tweet and sparkly thing that crosses your path is going to pull you off course. But let's say you have a work deadline and you value excellence and dependability. It will be easier to say no to distractions because that is what a dependable person who does excellent work would do. And that is who you are. Core values will also help you find your purpose if you're unsure about it. And this is what my Dream Job Academy is all about. When you know what truly matters to you, you can reverse engineer a life around it. And best yet, if you are prone to loving and leaving passions and career paths, knowing your values helps you find a job that will actually sustain your curiosity and enthusiasm for the long haul. I should also say here that in our lives, the values that we embody and adhere to might vary as we mature, because we might value luxury when we're young, and success means burning the midnight oil so we can afford to take fancy European vacations. Then as we get older, the value may become family togetherness. If your notion of success now looks like working fewer hours to be home when the kids get out of school. But in business, this shift happens less frequently. And I'm not saying you won't ever want to change any of your business values, but what they really come down to are the reasons that you wanted to start a business in the first place, the specific priorities that gave you the idea to go out on your own and become an entrepreneur. Your values are linked to your why, which is why knowing them for your business is equally, if not more important. And the good news for those of us whose entire identities are always in a state of flux, because your values are intrinsically linked to your why, they aren't going to change even if your specialization, ideal client, or color palette does, for example. Okay, so now that you know what core values are and you know why they're important, let's talk about how to discover yours. So step one, we need to start from childhood. Figure out where your values have come from. And for all of us, we adopt our family values, the community's values in which we grew up. And the day that someone told me to critically examine my list of values and ask myself if they really truly belonged to me, rather than just parroting a belief stemming from something I heard someone repeat a bunch when I was growing up, that day that I heard that changed my life. So if a parent says something like, it's impolite to talk about money, you might have internalized that privacy, in other words, not sharing personal details with others, is important to you. Can you see how that link kind of becomes a value that wasn't yours to begin with? So another example, if an authority figure told you that once you're a part of the workforce, you have to pay your dues, you might have hardworking as a value. And that might lead to overwork, or worse, not even be true for you. Like personally, if I can be wealthy and work hard, or be wealthy and spend half of every day making art, I will choose the latter. That's just one example of a value I had to unadopt, the like so hardworking I can't come up for air value. When I started exploring my own core values, that was one of the first things that I discovered. I have another episode about how fascinating it is to sort of decondition yourself like this. In case you're interested in checking that out, it's episode 31, Question Your Assumptions. So that episode and this one will provide a good foundation for getting to the root of which beliefs are actually yours. And then once we've uncovered those, there's still a little bit of work to do. So next up, I want to actually insert a caveat here and say, like, you might be tempted to grab a personal values list off the internet. Like as soon as I started talking about this, you might have been tempted to do that and then just like circle everything that sounds about right in pink highlighter. But here's what's tricky about our values. We don't choose them. They're not really conscious. They kind of reveal themselves to us. So if you start by looking at a list, you're going to be drawn to values that fit some model of right or admirable or the way things should be. And those ideas don't actually come from you. They come from parents and friends and media and society. So please just do step one without looking at a list first. Like I promise you will get a much more accurate list if you follow this instruction. And also, sidebar, if you are multitasking while listening to this episode, I made a free download of the steps and the questions that I'm about to go through. So you can grab that and work through the exercises at your own pace. So stick around to the end and I will tell you where to grab that. So step one, start by asking yourself the following questions. And you can like spend a few minutes journaling with each one. Don't overthink them. You really want to listen to your gut and jot your ideas down quickly. So number one, what is most important in your life? So beyond your basic human needs, like having a house, what must you have in your life to experience fulfillment? So creative self-expression, a strong level of health and vitality, a sense of excitement and adventure, to be surrounded by beauty, to always be learning. What are the personal values that you must honor or a part of yourself withers and dies? Okay. Question number one. Question number two. What does success mean to you? So if you're at the beginning of your career and you're in your 20s, that again might be working hard so you can take fancy vacations. If you're a little bit older and family is more important, success might have a reflection of that. Whatever stage you're at, describe what a successful existence looks like. Question number three, what galvanizes you into action? So to what causes would you donate large sums of money if you had all of the money in the world? What makes you furious, righteously indignant? Like when would you stand up out of your chair and shout because it's just too much? It's crossed the line. What beliefs are you willing to defend at all costs, even if they're an unpopular opinion, even if it means that people are going to look at you with a side eye and not want to hang out anymore? Okay, question number four. What qualities do you admire in others? This is really important because this is like what you want out of a romantic partner and in turn, how you should be reciprocating. Question five, when do you feel most proud of yourself? So what strengths are you proud to have inherited from your family? And question six, What do you hope will be written in a biography about your life? What ideals and standards do you personally want to be associated with? And so these are questions like, would I rather be liked or respected, right? That old chestnut. Okay. So once you've answered those questions, journaled about them a little bit, you come to step 2. Now you can go through a core values list if you want to. And I'm going to include a link to one in the show notes so you can click on that and really see if anything else resonates. I don't like giving you this instruction very much because you will see 1,000 things that resonate and want to add them all to your list, which sort of defeats the purpose of doing it this way. But I do have to say it because I managed to answer all of the above questions that I just gave you and got to the end and realized I'd left off creativity as a value. I actually realized it because I consulted the Google and I was like, obviously creativity, like it's the entire foundation of my business. And somehow it just didn't come up in the answers to the questions above. It's really weird. Like creative fulfillment should have come up as the answer to the first question, but somehow I missed it. The point of this second step is to ensure that there's nothing that you missed, but resist the temptation to go crazy and circle everything. All right. Now you've added a few more words to your list. Hopefully it's not like an insane looking list. Now, when you go over this finished page of writing, you might find that some of your answers don't actually constitute values. So here's what I mean by that. You might say that for fulfillment, you need long walks by the river and creative expression. Those are like 2 things you need to feel fulfilled. Long walks are clearly not a value. Creative expression is. But you can still turn long walks into something usable in this next step. So step 3 is to group all of the ideas on your list into related themes. So to give you an idea of what I mean by that, here are some examples from my own list. So responsible, accountable, and punctual. I feel like those are all kind of related. So I think that they could go under the umbrella term that like maybe best represents that group. It might be trustworthy. So trustworthiness is exemplified by someone taking responsibility for their own life, right? Being accountable when they screw up about something and showing up when they say they will on time. So that's how you whittle this list down to like the overarching value. Okay, so let's try that again. Self-aware, curious, and driven to improve, they kind of relate to each other too. I feel like they go like in the self-development bucket, if that makes sense. So here is where you would group something like long walks by the river with similar ideas under an umbrella like health and vitality, right? So the goal here is to whittle this list down to between 5 and 8 umbrella values total, hopefully less than 8. And then step 4, here again, like, don't worry if you have several sub values under each main category. It's the umbrella values that we're counting here. If you end up with more than 8 umbrella values, go back over your list and only choose the ones that are truly essential. They're not wants, they're needs for supporting your happiness. All right. So here's a last filter that you can put them through to make that determination. Consider the following questions. Would you be proud to talk about this value to people you admire? Does this value represent things you would support, even if your choice puts you in the minority? Would you sacrifice any of these values for $1 million? Have you lost any of these values in times of stress or high pressure? Do you envision that in 25 years, this value will still be true for you? Would you stop holding this value if at some point it became a competitive disadvantage? Okay, once you've done that, we're at step 5. For each of your umbrella values, ask yourself, how is success in this value measured? You have to do this step. If you've gone through everything else, this step is critical to close the loop, because if you don't, we're right back with the Cheshire Cat. Any road will get you there. So if you don't know what health and vitality look like for you, how will you know when you've achieved them? All right. So you need to create a yardstick that is meaningful to you and use it to gauge how closely your current behaviors adhere to the values that you've chosen. So when you're accountable to yourself for thinking and acting the way someone with integrity, for example, thinks and acts, you not only create a solid identity as someone with integrity, but you also develop your confidence in your ability to be someone you admire. All right. So that's it, you guys. And I promised you a study guide for this episode. You made it all the way to the end, and I appreciate you for it. You can grab that at jennyo'connor.com/values. And if any of you ever want to ask me a question and effectively get some laser coaching, send me a message on Instagram at Jenny the Wordsmith. I will answer on the air and shout out your business in a future episode. I know you guys have questions, and I will move mountains to get you the answers. And until next time, remember, success is when your core values and self-concept are in harmony with your daily actions and behaviors. Now get on out there and do the thing.